we will move to the next issue that we had agreed to look at just quickly, just take a minute or two from each of you about this taxi driver who is now being hailed all over because he's a hero of the time. He ran his taxi into suspected armed robbers because they had snatched someone's bag with money at the Koala shopping mall, and he ran into them, hit them, and ensured that they did not escape, and police took over, and they are currently standing trial. That gentleman, the taxi driver, has been giving is it a 3-bedroom house by the president or the state, and also he's been giving a taxi by Koala shopping mall. There are those who are raising questions. Yes, this is a good deed, but there are those who say it sounds like seeking to encourage vigilante justice. Is that how you see it, Clara?
No, I do not see it as seeking to encourage vigilante justice. We should all realize that under our laws, the taxi driver's action is provided for. Under our law, it allows citizens under certain circumstances, including when a crime is being committed in your presence, to arrest the suspected criminal if you can. The law requires that after you arrest the person, you hand them over to the police. Immediately. And from the reports that I see, this is similar. The taxi driver, after at least incapacitating them from running away, didn't proceed to take the law into his hands, as I understand.
He could have killed them.
He didn't. So we are not looking at what he could have done. We are looking at what he has done.
Right.
And I think we should separate vigilante justice from the action of the taxi driver. Mob justice is completely to be condemned. I don't think there is any excuse at all for mob justice. Mob justice ought to be condemned, but that must be differentiated from somebody who has prevented suspected criminals from running away. His action, the actions of such persons, is provided for in law. Secondly, I think by trying to leave the action of the taxi driver to now discuss whether or not he was entitled to any other presents he got and all that, I think we missed the point.
All right.
One, I think the taxi driver deserves all the praise that he is getting. And I think what we should be looking at is to encourage the attitude of not on my watch. We are not saying that everybody should run around and chase and hate suspected armed robbers with their cars. But we should encourage the attitude of not on my watch, which is that if in your presence crime is being conducted wherever you are, including in your office, that if you see fraud being committed, you have a duty to report. You have a duty to do something about it. So what this taxi driver did is to do something about what he could do at the time that he witnessed a crime going on.
Thank you.
And just to conclude, so I think if there are other people who deserve our praise, we should make a case for them to be praised, and then if we have rewards for them, we reward them. But we shouldn't let it take away from the exemplary conduct of the taxi driver.
Talking about if there are other people who deserve to be praised, I have the privilege this week of going through a process and eventually getting to meet the man who is said to have been the one who managed to seize the ready-to-fire gun from the gentleman entry who wanted to shoot the president and kill the president. He's never been heard of, and there's not been a word about him. He alone went into that church, disarmed the gentleman, and the gun was ready to fire, really. And he handed him over to the police. Actually, he took a police officer who is a guard of the Chief Justice's handcuffs and put it on the guy, and then handed him over. I don't know, why is it that when it comes to a taxi driver, we are rewarding them, but when it comes to someone who attempted to shoot the president, we never mention him?
I think that is. I think that doesn't reflect well on us. I think wherever a heroic action is done, we should recommend it. I would recommend the media in this case, especially with the case of the taxi driver. I think the media did a lot to bring the incident to the public domain. This is something the media could have also done. Because generally, like, the general public wouldn't know what went on. They rely on the media for the information. And in this case, it's something that if probably the media had brought to the attention of the general public, maybe some people would have been a lot more grateful and praise the
conduct. I thought that
it's not too late. I don't think it's too late.
Would have known that, and they didn't need the media to tell them. Okay. Susan, what do you have to say about this act, which is being hailed all over, and the gentleman is being rewarded all over?
Well, well, I think that you know, the taxi driver, you know, in the heat of the moment, took a certain action, like Clara said, not on my watch. This shouldn't happen. And he did what he did. It's not everybody that has the capacity to do that. You know, when the adrenaline is pumping, it's either flight or fight. And depending on your constitution, you may just run away when guns are. But this is a very brave person who says, I'm not going to allow this to happen. And so not everybody should think that they have the capacity to do that. He put his life on the line. Mm-hmm. I mean, because they from what I hear, they were still shooting even though they were incapacitated. But you know, he took that risk, and in taking that risk, you know, we've appreciated what has come out of it, and he deserves. You know, and more. I mean, there are many people out there. There are unsung heroes out there, definitely, and. We ought to go out there and find them and praise them. I think I see that the telecos are trying to do things like that, where they're going into the communities and asking people to come out and say, who is in this community is your hero, and you should come. And it's a good thing, because what I think the saying going, a country that does not honor its heroes is not worth dying for. And this is all that we have. This is our Ghana. This is our land. And you know, we make up the country, so we must fight for it. And so I think that, you know, he went out there, he did what it is. We should look at our persons and do it in the different ways that we can. Look, I always say that sometimes, even in traffic, when people are passing the shoulder, one person goes and blocks it, and everybody else follows and makes sure. That is heroism. Right. You know, somebody that is not allowing wrong to take place. Because many times, people just stand there and are so afraid for their car, they allow people to. And I say that behavior is always translated into the things that we do in the office and everywhere in our life, where somebody is doing wrong and we turn a blind eye because I don't want to get into trouble. You know, he's come to bash my car, and then we don't stop it. If you look at the things that happen in our traffic, it's a reflection of the type of people that we are. You know, we stand there thinking about me, myself, and I. But you always find that one person who says, I'm not going to allow people to use the shoulder. I will block it. I will not use it and allow, you know, to. So we should be encouraging.
Just how do you suggest this is even further projected to encourage a lot more of this in the community?
Well, absolutely. I think we are all added them on the fact that this was actually a heroic act by the selfless taxi driver. It was actually an involuntary act, something that very few of us would do in the face of arms and a gun and persons that you didn't even know to what extent they would be going to protect themselves from being arrested. So for that particular individual to come out single-handedly, and then of course, let's also look at our history, that a lot of these cabs usually have been used as vehicles to commit such crimes, and it has been difficult. They change the number plates, they repaint the vehicles. So for the very first time to hear of such a heroic act of selflessness by an individual cab driver, I think is quite an achievement, is exemplary. It tells you that despite all of our misgivings, there are still those few individuals who do these selfless acts day in, day out. I mean, take for example, when you go to the hospital sometimes, you're badly injured and people don't even know who you are. We still have those Florence Nightingales in the hospital. Much as people talk about customer service in our hospitals, there is always that individual who is selfless enough, committed enough to show compassion when you need it most. So yes, individually and in all our communities, we have such individuals. Yes, depending on the nature of that heroic act, depending on where it happened, how it happened, and who actually gets to know about it, that would normally determine the extent to which we all go to celebrate these acts of heroism from our citizens. But yes, it is an action worth emulating. It is something we should continue to look out for. And listen, the shop itself that sent that lady in question, look at the proactivity with which they even dealt with the matter. So the whole attention about it really was not to do so much about the reward that came after, but it saved that company probably a huge sum of money. And listen, that presently they haven't even disclosed how much the lady had on her on that fateful evening.
Right.
It was peak hour. There were so many people around. Imagine trying even to prevent armed robbers on a motorbike from leaving the scene of a crime. It is never an easy thing to do. And there are several individuals, like Susan said, in our communities, in our lives, day in, day out, who work and put themselves at the utmost risk to prevent such acts from happening. And I think you alluded to that other incident involving the shooter in the church. I think the circumstances are different.
Okay.
The matter was duly investigated and a decision was made. And of course, because of who is also involved, sometimes you would temper the sort of reward that you offer and the sort of noise that is associated with it. I'm sure there's always two schools of thought, that at the time, if we had made as much effort to reward as we have in this case, and I'm sure if you probably go back and investigate, there must have been some reward given, but for good reasons, that one was probably not as well hyped as this incident.
No reward was given.
Well, you've checked that and you are sure no reward was given.
To the individual.
Okay, so that's fine. We can take, but I'm sure there must have been a good reason, because that was a matter too that received a lot of attention, and I'm sure there's reason why it was left at the time as it actually is presently. But in this case, let's all continue to celebrate those individuals in our lives, day in, day out. The little girl crossing the road and that adult coming out to pull them back and stop the vehicles so they prevent an accident. The young child who is ill and goes to the hospital, and that nurse who takes notice and actually makes that extra effort to help. Those people who donate blood when people need it most. Let's continue to encourage efforts by individuals, not just in our communities, but the country at large. Look, sometimes even when you're in court and you're trying to get a witness, you know what our attitudes are. Nobody wants to come forward. Yes. Absolutely. I don't want to get involved. A crime occurs in the neighbor's house, and you know that other people were watching. Try asking for answers. Nobody will tell you because they don't want to be involved. Maybe police will call me tomorrow and ask me questions. I don't want to know. Maybe there's always something in the cobweb that they don't even want people to notice.
They could disclose essential information to you, but they are not ready to follow you.
Never. So let's just commend the singular act of heroism by this individual, coming from a particular community of cab drivers that have been blamed for so many atrocities. Yes, let's just actually recognize.
As MPs, you deal very directly with the constituents, the people one-on-one. How are you able to project things like this so that we get the society that we are looking to?
Some level of cynicism has crept into our society, and it's eroding our moral fiber. So when we hear of things like this, everybody rejoices that all is not lost. There's still good people out there who are willing to put themselves out. I doubt if he did it thinking of what he could get. No.
He says no.
No. I'm sure he didn't even think.
Yes.
It was a spontaneous reaction. We can't let this happen. And then bam, he just chased them and knocked them off. So all this, I'm sure, is a very pleasant surprise to him as well. But like my sisters have said, it shows us that all is not lost, and so we need to nurture that, celebrate it, and encourage people to do even more for their society, to give something back wherever you are. If you see something wrong taking place, speak up against it. It's got so bad that those who insist on the right things being done in this country are the bad people. Yeah. They're the ones who are vilified, and you're too known, and are you the only one who's carrying this job on your shoulders and all that. So people have decided that, let me just mind my own business. But we can't let that die. We can't kill that humanity in us. We can't kill the empathy that we have for one another.
We passed the Whistleblower Act to assist us to be able to do even reports corruption and other things within our offices. I doubt how many people...
The first whistleblowers almost got into serious trouble.
Right.
If people hadn't
spoken... that you're referring to.
Yeah, if people hadn't spoken up against it. And then the person who blew the whistle on Muntaka, in the Muntaka case, yes. They were fired more or less until there was a public uproar, and then they were reinstated. You know, we are one another's keeper. We need each other. If something wrong is going on in our presence, it is our duty to speak up, no matter what it will cost us. Now, what would have happened if, because he stopped them, the taxi driver had become injured from the hail of bullets that the robbers were still firing
Right.
in the air, it would have been his personal injury.
Right.
But he didn't think about that, and that didn't stop him. He just saw an innocent victim, and he said, no, I'm not going to allow this to happen. There's been so many stories of people whose bags have been snatched by those motorcycle riders who've gotten away with it. So there was some level of impunity creeping into this mode of commission of crimes. Thankfully, now those who use motorcycles to commit crimes will think twice, because they don't know when the next taxi driver vigilante or private car vigilante would also knock them off.
Right.
So it will inject some sanity into our system. So he deserves everything he's got and more. It's worth emulating, but that doesn't mean we should go out looking for people riding motorcycles.
Right. Thank you also very much. And that's really a very good example, risking it all for justice. It's supposed to be one of the things that will be in the psyche of every Ghanaian. Let's hope that, like Esla said, all is not lost. We'll be right back to deal with the president's encounter with the media.